Hi guys. So before I read a story, it was awesome to look at our similarities and our differences with our Venn diagram, and we noticed a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, and it's what makes us unique. We talked about unique. All right, so I'm gonna read this book. It has a little bit of something what we're talking about in the story. Okay, so the case for loving. This is the book. It's by Selena Alco. And this is their family portrait. I love the illustrations. It's like very cartoony. Do you notice what season it is that it could be? And all right, ready? So, first comes love, then comes marriage. Donald, Peggy, and Sydney had two parents who loved them and who loved each other. In fact, from almost the moment Richard Loving met Mildred Jeter, they wanted to get married and have a family. But for them, it wasn't that simple, and here's why. Okay, you see that there's music flowing through the room, and there's a Christmas tree. And this is their house, and it's cold outside. Some really cool illustrations. All right, Richard was a white, fair-skinned boy who quickly got sunburnt in July. And Mildred was what they called colored in those days, and her skin was creamy caramel. All right, and then in 1958, they lived in a small town of Central Point, Virginia, where people of every shade from the color of chamomile tea to summer midnight made their homes. When you think of chamomile tea and shades of midnight, what are they talking about? Yeah. So this gives you more of a reference of what they're talking about with their skin color. Okay, yeah, and you notice that they're two different types of color, and they both have brown eyes. That's a similarity. And they look like they're madly in love with each other from the cartoon, but in real pictures I'll show you too. All right. Richard Loving was a good, caring man, and he didn't see differences. There was one person Richard loved more than the rest. Mildred Jeter was part African American and part Cherokee. Cherokee is Indian. And but what most folks in Central Point noticed was how thin she was, and that's how she got her nickname, String Bean. What's a string bean? Yeah. It's like a green bean. It's a very skinny green bean. All right. When Richard popped the question, String Bean jumped with joy. All right. There were two. Oh, sorry. The two were in love. They felt that it should be their right to get married. Sadly, it was not. Not in Virginia or 16 other states. In those places, marriages between people of different races were against the law. You see how they're being segregated? What do you think segregating means? What is that? Yeah, it means to keep people apart. You're right. And it's discrimination. So based on a color of your skin, it's discriminating. It's not equal. All right. So there we go. 100 years later, slavery divided America along colored lines. Even after slavery ended, some white people weren't used to blacks being free, and let alone free to marry whom they choose. If you married someone who had skin color unlike your own, you could go to jail. Mildred and Richard wanted to get married, but they did not want to spend any time in prison. Prison's scary. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to either. I wouldn't want to go to jail, but they ended up getting married. Although they couldn't have legal marriage in Virginia, they could right next door in Washington, D.C. So they invited a few friends and family to witness their wedding across state lines. At the ceremony, nobody objected when Richard said, "I do," and Mildred said, "I do too." The Lovings were officially pronounced husband and wife, and the blushing bride and her groom smiled all the way from D.C. back to their house in Virginia. They couldn't wait to start a family. They are a very cute couple. Why do you think it was illegal to get married to each other back then? Yeah, to keep everything separated. Yeah, it's really sad. Everybody separated and everything separated. It wasn't equal. It wasn't fair. All right, but soon something terrible happened. In the middle of the night, they were awoken from their sleep. It was the police. An officer shouted at Richard, "What are you doing with that woman?" Richard proudly pointed to their marriage certificate hanging on the wall. "That's not good here," the policeman boomed. How would you feel if someone broke into your house and arrested you for loving someone? Not even doing a crime, not hurting anybody, just loving somebody. Would that make you feel sad, scared? It makes her look scared. And just like that, Mildred and Richard were taken away and locked up in jail. They were charged with unlawful cohabitation, which means living together against the law. The Lovings didn't think that there was anything unlawful about their love at all. If anything, the way they were treated should have been unlawful, and it just was awful. Unlawful, awful. So what was cohabitation mean? It means living together against the law. Cohabitation means to live together as a married couple, but not being married. But they made it against the law back then. After a few nights behind bars, Richard and Mildred were told that they had to leave Virginia and wanted to live together if they wanted to live together as Mr. and Mrs. Loving. What do the faces say? Are they sad? Are they happy? Are they concerned? They wanted to start a family. So, with heavy hearts, they pair hugged their families and packed their bags and left for their home. It looks like she might be pregnant too. So she's leaving her mom and dad with babies on the way. So they tried to make a life for themselves in D.C. Richard found a job laying bricks, and String Bean gave birth to 3 babies, 3 different shades of milk chocolate brown. Donald, which is one of these boys, Peggy, and Sydney, one of these other boys. But the city didn't suit the Lovings. There were too many cars, there was too many concrete. They missed Central Point with all the rolling hills and the open spaces. They missed their friends and their families. They missed their home. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. They wanted to return to Virginia for good, so they hired lawyers to help fight for what was right. By now it was 1966, and the times they were a changin'. Brand new ideas like equal rights for people of all colors were replacing old fearful ways of thinking. It says equality now, equal rights now, peace, freedom, I don't know what it says right here. No time, no gym. End segregation, jobs now, voting rights. Very, very, very important in our decade that year. So what does equality mean? Equality means that having the same value, measure, and amount of something, or amount of freedom as somebody else. The lawyers worked around the clock to make the case for interracial marriage as strong as possible. It was time to take the Loving case all the way to the Supreme Court. That's really, really important. They're doing it for not only their family, but for everybody else that is going through this as well. On June 12, 1967, when the case of Loving versus Virginia began, Richard and Mildred stayed at home with Donald, Peggy, and Sidney. They were all nervous and afraid that they would not win. The state argued that in order to preserve the purity of the white race, blacks and whites must remain separate. Then it was the Loving's lawyers to turn the present to their case. They said it was unconstitutional to make marriage a crime because of race. And they read the message from Richard himself. Tell the court I love my wife, and it is just unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia. Tell the court I love my wife. Very powerful. It didn't take long for the decision to be made, and it was unanimous. The court ruled in favor for the Lovings. Interracial couples can now legally marry in Virginia. Richard and Mildred hugged, and they won the right to their love. They were free at last. They're so happy. Over 9 years after their arrest, the Lovings packed up their bags, and one final time, Richard planned to build a big, roomy brick house in Central Point. String Bean was ready to start their life over. The Loving family had returned to Virginia to live. And it says, happily and legally ever after. Alright, so I kind of run that question. It says, do you think this book was based on real events? And I kind of said in the beginning it was. And I really liked this book because it shows real pictures of them. And about the art. It talks about the art. That was so pretty in here too. So if you get a chance to pick up this book, definitely pick it up. It is really, really awesome to learn this part of our history, and it's important to be equal and have a compassion for others and to love one another. Even with our differences, we're all unique. Nobody's the same, and that's so important.